Hold up. Someone just told me that they're riding XRP all the way to triple digits before even thinking about cashing out, and they're dead serious. And I don't mean internet comment section serious, I mean they've already planned the yacht party serious. Now, you know that feeling, right? When a friend drops a wild plan on you and you have to decide whether to laugh, high five, or quietly Google how much life insurance costs. Now that's exactly where I was kind of watching 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓, yep, that's the Alpha Lions Academy guy, lay out his personal XRP exit strategy. Now I clicked on his kind of video expecting the usual kind of when moon hype, but by the end I was basically taking notes like an undercover journalist at a secret society meeting. So I grabbed my favorite caffeinated beverage because I'm about to kind of walk you through 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓's kind of blueprint, sprinkle in my own kind of thoughts, and maybe convince you to rethink that dusty old sell at $5 sticky note off of your monitor. Okay, so first, the quick stats so that we're all on the same page. My XRP, at the point that I am recording this and talking to you guys, sits around $2 and some change. Let's call it $2.15 for the math later. Now, 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓 kind of bought his first bags back when vending machines still took coins, about 20 cents per token. Now, that alone is legendary timing, a lot like mine at 17 cents, but here is where things get spicy. Now, his first kind of planned sell button, tap, doesn't actually even blink until XRP hits, drumroll, $10. 10. Now, for most people, that number alone is champagne territory, but to 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓, it's just the opening toast. Now, he's only going to shave off 3, maybe 4% of his holdings right there, and the rest was locked up tighter than Grandma's secret cookie recipe. Now, the man isn't hoarding kind of for hoarding's sake here. He's got a plan that feels like half of Wall Street. It's kind of half Macaron's kind of vacation kind of brochure. When kind of $10, flashes on the TradingView app, he will cashes a kind of slither off, throws a yacht party in Greece. Yes, literal yacht, literal Greece. And then kind of funnels the bulk of that kind of mini cash out into real estate. So let's just picture him stepping off of the yacht then, right? Still wearing, boat shoes, signing papers for a beachfront property apartment, diversify or die never sounded so Mediterranean. But here is the angle that kind of really vibed with me. Only 10% of his XRP even sits on exchanges, and that's 90% chilling in cold storage like Arctic Circle cold, unreachable by the impulsive swipe of a sweaty thumb. So if you've ever kind of panic sold during a dip, you'll understand why that move is genius. You physically can't doom scroll your way into dumping when your coins are basically in digital Fort Knox. Okay, so let's pause and park the Lambo of imagination for just a second, because I can almost hear the comment section typing, bro, $10 XRP is tomorrow. Maybe, maybe not. Now, some analyticals are sipping that optimism smoothie and calling $10 this year. Others are the cautious kind of, tortoise muttering, relax, grasshopper. Now, meanwhile, of course, 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓 is sipping something else entirely and mapping out $50 and $100 milestones like he's planning stops on a road trip. And yes, you did indeed hear those numbers right. His second pit stop is $50. It's the same tiny slice, 3 to 4% gone. Then the final boss level is a $100 per XRP. Now, at that point, he sells only 2%. So let's understand the math then, right? Just 1,000 XRP at a $100 level is 100 grand. So that's the kind of simple division that kind of makes you question every kind of late night pizza that you bought instead of stacking more crypto. But, and this is a Titanic sized but, 𝗕𝗏𝗪 swears that selling is not the finish line. It's merely the kind of celebratory kind of confetti cannon. The real end game, he says, is actually lending, right? So picture a future where banks, yes, the same institutions that once side-eyed crypto like it was kind of a fake designer bag, actually want to borrow your XRP. Now, regulations, they tighten up, clarity happens, your tokens become the cool kid that everyone wants to hang out with. Instead of dumping your bags, you hand them over temporarily, earn interest in stablecoins, fiat, or maybe even more XRP, and still keep the underlying asset. It's passive income on digital steroids. Now, that idea kind of hit me like discovering extra fries at the bottom of the bag. It's pure joy plus immediate questions. So how do we know when regulation is clear? You know, which platforms survive the inevitable government kind of paperwork avalanche? And will rates actually be juicy enough to justify holding instead of selling? Now, 𝗕𝗏𝗪's answer here, it kind of boils down to is patience and positioning, right? Cash out a bit for celebrations and security, but let the lion's share, pun intended, work for you once the grown-ups, regulators, finish arguing about definitions. Now, I'll be honest, right? I've been guilty of the opposite mindset. I used to think, get in, ride a pump, yeet everything into Tether, and brag on Discord. But hearing this, I kind of caught myself imagining what life would look like if XRP truly does slot into the plumbing of global finance. If cross-border kind of payments move from, clunky email era wires to on-chain near instant transfers, who's laughing then? Probably whoever, or at least whichever nerd is earning 8% APY lending XRP to the very same banks that charge you fees to hold your fiat. And now, because we're friends and I promise casual truth bombs, let's talk risk, right? Triple-digit XRP is not a guaranteed future, right? Analysts at Changelly and Telegon tossed timeframes like the next decade into the ring. That's a long Netflix binge, right? And if you need to kind of cash out for rent next month, a $100 XRP roadmap might feel like kind of saving a seat on a Mars colony shuttle. But 𝗕𝗏𝗪's plan accounts for that. 10% on exchanges ready to pivot. If bills, come calling, or an altcoin shiny object does indeed appear, he's got a bite-sized bag to kind of play with, without kind of cracking open the cold storage safe. And here is a little nugget that I really appreciate, which is he removes his initial investment early, right? Classic risk management play here. It's kind of like heading to the casino with $100, winning 200, then pocketing your original 100 before continuing the night. The worst case scenario is that you break even. The best case scenario is you're posting yacht selfies on Insta with captions that humble brag about financial freedom. And speaking of freedom, let me weave in something rather important. If you want a place to kind of bounce these strategies around, poke holes, or just share memes of XRP rockets, our free Discord server is open 24/7. So why don't you hit that link that's in the description, jump in, and you might actually catch me debating whether, you've got various different areas, Centauri maybe, or Rhodes, has better Wi-Fi for remote trading. And seriously, right? It's kind of pure community vibes and zero paywall drama. And because smart exits require smart on-ramps, don't sleep on Blowfin, right? Yeah. Blowfin, the exchange that's quietly living up while the big guys kind of slap you with fees. Now sign up through the description, the link is in the description, right? Start trading and you'll see why I've got half my short-term plays parked right there. It's got the lowest spreads, the slick interface, and they're hungry enough to keep rolling out features that we actually ask for. So think of them as the Spotify to everyone else's kind of, scratched CDs. Okay, so back to 𝗕𝗏𝗪. Now, one of my kind of favorite quotes from his video was when he kind of called premature selling a dumb move. And it's pretty harsh, maybe, right? But I kind of get his frustration here. Too many people treat crypto like fast fashion, right? Flip it, dump it, forget it. He's kind of arguing for treating XRP like prime real estate. Location, location, future utilization. Now, if the underlying tech becomes a backbone for global transactions, today's price swings are, background noise. That's a level of conviction that you either find inspiring or completely delusional, depending, of course, on how many Reddit threads that you've read. Okay, so here, let me paint you a mental picture, right? Imagine it's 2030. You scroll into a cafe in Athens, pay for your cold brew with a tap of your phone, and behind the scenes, that transaction settles in seconds via XRP rails. Now, you, the early adopter, you aren't sweating coffee prices because your main stack is off earning interest on some regulated lending platform. Every sip tastes like victory, and that's kind of Adreno's dream scenario in a nutshell. Now, I'm not here to kind of be your personal financial advisor. I am not a financial advisor. I cannot give financial advice. I'm just the guy relaying a story and sharing why it made me rethink the knee-jerk kind of exit targets. But you have to consider this. If you're convinced about XRP's long-term role, does it really matter whether it hits $10 next quarter or in 2027? Your strategy should line up with your conviction, not your neighbor's price prediction tweet. And of course, strategy evolves, right? Maybe you start with an aggressive time horizon, but life throws curveballs, maybe a new job, family, or unexpected urges, to buy a 3D printed house maybe, right? That's kind of where Adreno kind of staggered sell plan actually feels realistic, right? You nibble at milestones, you reward yourself, you de-risk, but you never kind of touch the kind of bridge to potential generational wealth. That's kind of what's going on here. It's the crypto equivalent of eating the frosting but leaving the cake intact. There's also psychological gold in kind of setting public targets here, right? Saying I won't sell until $100 is kind of like announcing you're running a marathon. Your friends, the internet, maybe even your subconscious kind of starts holding you accountable for it. Sure, it invites skeptics, but it also kind of fortifies discipline. Next time XRP slides 15% in a week, you're less tempted to kind of hit the eject button because you've already committed to the long game. And speaking of commitment here, let's address lending again because it is kind of the sleepier headline, right? Crypto lending has been, or at least has had, I should say, its shady seasons, right? Cue flashbacks to platforms that folded faster than, origami in a rainstorm. Now, regulation is the kind of missing puzzle piece here, right? Once frameworks drop and legitimize financial institutions, opening their kind of vaults to digital assets, we could actually see interest products that make traditional savings accounts look like the kiddie piggy bank. Right? Holding XRP becomes less about speculative upside and more about reliable yield. So just imagine banks competing to borrow your tokens the way that streaming services kind of chase exclusive shows. Now you pick, who pays the best rates, sets the terms, and, let the passive income just roll in. I guess it kind of sounds utopian, but remember the very early days of the internet, right? People mocked online shopping, and now we kind of mourn when the same day shipping takes longer than 6 hours, right? Fintech innovation, it moves from joke to norm faster than you can say overnight upgrade. But yet, contingencies, they do matter, right? What if XRP never anchors the global payment network? What if regulatory kind of clarity never actually, clarifies? And in that scenario, Adreno's kind of early profit skimming looks downright prudent, right? He's diversified into Greek real estate, something tangible, rentable, and historically desirable. It's like hedging your futuristic rocket ship with a cozy seaside cottage. No matter how the digital world swings, at least you've got a view from the kind of 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗃. And if you are wondering, yes, I ran my own numbers after watching the video. Spoiler, even conservative calculations, show that cashing out tiny increments at major milestones can cover life's essentials without gutting the moonshot potential. It's a strategy that treats crypto less like a lottery ticket and more like a carefully managed vineyard. Harvest a little bit each season, but don't uproot the vines. Okay, so quick side anecdote then, right? I once sold a chunk of a different altcoin way too early. It doubled again the next month, and I felt like the guy who had left the party just before the free pizza arrived. Now, Adreno's approach here is basically, engineered to avoid that kind of heartbreak, right? Keep enough skin in the game so your future rallies don't feel like cosmic jokes at your expense. But let's zoom out. Why does this story resonate beyond die-hard XRP fans? Well, it's because it illustrates a universal investing truth. Strategies kind of beat price predictions, right? Anyone can tweet XRP to $589, but showing a disciplined ladder exit plan, well, that's substance. Whether you're into Bitcoin, meme coins, or kind of banana futures, right? Blending celebration cash outs with long-term yield chasing creates balance. You enjoy the kind of present without sacrificing tomorrow. And hey, celebrating does matter. So if your crypto gains only exist in at least as green numbers on a screen, you kind of risk burnout. Now, Adreno's kind of, yacht party kind of sounds over the top, but it's more about flex. It's actually more than just flexing. It's actually a psychological milestone, a tangible reward that reinforces good decisions and resets kind of motivation for the next decade-long hold. Maybe your vision is just a new laptop, or maybe paying off student loans. Whatever kind of makes you smile without derailing, well, the master plan. And speaking of smiling, you should have seen me, I should say, grin when I realized that Bluefin's new staking suite, could actually dovetail nicely with a future XRP lending product. Now, I'm telling you, right, poke around their interface and just imagine plugging Adreno's roadmap into real functionality. Early adoption of robust platforms is kind of like reserving kind of front row seats before the concert even sells out. And again, there's a link waiting for you guys in the description below. Okay, let's circle back here and talk about the elephant in the blockchain. And that is the regulatory clarity doesn't bless us until, let's say, 2035. Now look, there's no shame in adjusting along the way, but locking your entire strategy to kind of, persism is kind of refusing, to learn the guitar because you might never actually play, Madison Square Gardens. So just implement kind of guardrails, right? Cold wallets, there's a link for Ledger in the description, milestone sales, real world diversification, and you'll actually sleep more comfortably whether, regulations land next summer or, the next solar eclipse. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, storyteller, what are you personally doing? And I've adopted a mini Adreno kind of model here, right? I move 90% of my XRP into an air-gapped vault. I set, staggered and staged alerts, $10 for a small, high five, 50 for a kind of bigger one. And yes, that $100 moonshot, for, kind of take the family on an extended island sabbatical moment. But I'm also exploring kind of lending protocols at the same time, but only those with insured funds and transparent audits, because passive income kind of beats doom scrolling charts every single day. Now, before we kind of wrap up, I want you to imagine something, right? It's 2040. You're checking your portfolio from a hammock, and passive XRP interest just paid your electricity bill. Now, you message our Discord. Did I mention there's a link for that down below, by the way, and drop in maybe a goofy GIF to celebrate, right? Now, newcomers, they join, they ask you how you did it, and you can share this very story. That, my friend, is the power of long-term conviction with, at least mixed with, strategic cash outs. And it's all kind of started with one guy kind of publicizing his yacht funding, real estate expansion, and lend it to banks exit plan. Okay, let's breathe. We've covered entry points, exit percentages, risk mitigation, even the Greek mental model, regulatory roulette, and even a shameless plug for Blowfin and our community server down in the links in the description. Now, if you found even a kind of shred of value here, or at least a good laugh at my pizza missed tragedy, stick around, because the next video dives into how to actually kind of vet lending platforms before handing over your kind of precious coins. And trust me, it's a wild ride that you don't want to miss. So go ahead and check out Cheeky Crypto Education YouTube channel. There's a link in the description.